This episode contains content that may be considered disturbing or offensive to some listeners, including violence and strong language. It is not recommended for young audiences. Listener discretion is advised. There is a dimension beyond the mundane, a realm where the ordinary twists into the extraordinary, a place where shadows conceal secrets and the unexpected and bizarre lurk around every corner. Welcome to Pulp. I am Catherine Emsley, your host. Each episode I'll bring you a chilling tale about the things we don't notice, but which are very much there, waiting to be discovered. So step into the unknown and let your imagination run wild. Ricky Rice was a spectral figure in the city's underbelly, a towering 6'5" apparition who moved through the shadows with an unnatural ease. His brown suit, white button-down shirt, and square wire-framed spectacles were a smokescreen, a way to blend in with the crowd, a blur in people's peripheral vision. Ricky had always been good at his job, a knack that seemed to come as naturally to him as breathing. He discovered his talent at the tender age of 14 during a chance encounter with Chad Anderson, the spoiled brat of a sleazy car salesman. It was second period and the halls were deserted, save for Ricky, who was washing his hands in the bathroom. Entering the bathroom, Chad took one look at Ricky and launched into a cruel tirade, mocking his appearance in his father's hand-me-down clothes, the only clothes that could fit this young giant. Chad soon learned a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his life, which, unfortunately, was about 9 seconds long. With a nonchalant flick of his wrist, Ricky pushed Chad slightly harder than expected, sending him tumbling backwards. The spoilt brat's head collided with a porcelain toilet bowl, the impact echoing through the empty bathroom. Chad felt no pain as his skull cracked against the toilet bowl with a sickening, hollow sound that echoed in the small, confined space. Ricky watched Chad's body slump to the floor, his eyes wide and unfocused, staring off into space. A thin trickle of blood began to seep from the wound, staining the white porcelain of the toilet bowl. The silence that followed was broken only by a faint drip of water. As the blood spread across the tiled floor, Ricky had felt a strange calm wash over him, a sense of satisfaction. He pushed Chad's legs into the stall and closed the door. He washed his hands again because cleanliness is next to godliness, and then he returned to class. It was only at lunchtime that screams were heard coming from the bathroom. Ricky went outside and sat on his usual bench under a tree and ate his sandwich. Ham, cheese, and tomato with both mayo and mustard. It was a good sandwich. Ricky had been plying his trade for 15 years now. Some called him a heartless, cold-blooded killer, but he preferred to think of himself as a professional, a businessman who offered a premium service. He had a cat, Frank, whose attitude and lifestyle fitted perfectly with Ricky's. Frank had belonged to a target that Ricky had strangled to death in her bed one night. Frank watched with a level of disinterest as Ricky's hand squeezed his human's neck tighter and tighter. Eventually, when the woman's eyes started to bulge, Frank returned to grooming himself. Ricky respected Frank, and so, after finishing the job, he swooped him up and carried him home. Ricky and Frank shared the same home, but stayed out of each other's ways, never making demands on each other. It was a perfect match. At 36, Ricky had ascended to a level of excellence that would make even the most seasoned corporate CEO green with envy. Yet he preferred the solitary life of a freelancer, the freedom it afforded him. He'd slipped through the cracks unseen, unheard. Law enforcement didn't even have him on their radar. Things were great until that fateful day 3 weeks back. A plain brown envelope arrived, bearing no return address. Inside, a stack of glossy photos and a few scribbled notes. his handler had laid out a new target. Gloria Miller, a suburban housewife, all smiles and PTA meetings. Perfect on the surface. But someone wanted her gone, and they'd picked him to do the dirty work. Out of morbid curiosity, he delved into the husband's life, a perpetual sourpuss, always grumbling about something. No surprise there. He'd found the affair, a tawdry little secret. The other woman, a bombshell, the polar opposite of the wholesome Gloria. It was the husband, no doubt. A man driven by lust and greed, willing to sacrifice anything, even his own wife, for a fleeting thrill. Ah, what a shame, Ricky had said to himself. Ricky sat across the street from the corner cafe, watching Gloria sip coffee with a friend. His briefcase, open on his lap, held a Beretta 92 FS, suppressor already in place. He'd adjusted the gun, then closed the case, glancing at his Omega Speedmaster. 12 minutes until the bus. Ricky tapped his foot, a nervous twitch. This wasn't like the others, the scum he'd dealt with in the past. They deserved it, but Gloria, she was different. Innocent, and a good mother, a devoted wife to a real piece of work. He watched her, laughing with her friend, oblivious of the hellstorm brewing behind her. At least her last moments would be peaceful. A rustle in the bushes startled him. A tiny white rabbit, a picture of innocence, hopped out and sat at his feet and started to groom itself. Ricky watched it, then back to Gloria. Damn, he muttered, the words barely audible. Can't kill something so innocent. What's that? Said a soft voice. Ricky jumped, his heart pounding in his chest. He scanned the area, but there was no one in sight. Hello? He said, his voice barely a breath. Hello? The voice repeated, echoing in his mind. Ricky spun around, searching for the source, but nothing. I'm losing it, he muttered, sinking back into the bench. It happens, the voice said, a hint of amusement in its tone. Ricky was furious. He couldn't stand up, his height would draw attention. Who's there? He demanded, his voice rising. Well, who wants to know? The voice replied, a mocking lilt in its tone. Ricky looked down at the rabbit, which had stopped grooming itself, and was now staring at him with an almost human intensity. Not gonna answer me? Said the rabbit. The fuck? Ricky exclaimed, his eyes wide. The rabbit's mouth was moving, its tiny lips forming words. Oh, don't get all dramatic, the rabbit said. Never seen a talking rabbit before? Ricky leaned back, his eyes fixed on the creature. I'm losing it, he muttered, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. Nah, you're fine, said the rabbit. A little chunky, maybe, but, who isn't these days? Ricky touched his stomach, self-conscious. Did a rabbit just call me fat? He muttered. I didn't say fat, the rabbit corrected. Just a little overweight. Ricky's jaw dropped. What the hell was happening? Stroke? Blackout? Hallucination? Am I having a stroke? He asked, his voice trembling. Do I look like a doctor? The rabbit replied, its voice dripping with sarcasm. You're a rabbit, Ricky said, his mind racing. Well, aren't you a clever one? The rabbit remarked, settling back on its haunches. A human who can recognize a rabbit. Now that's a stroke of genius. Don't give me attitude, Ricky snapped, his patience wearing thin. I'm not an idiot. I didn't say you were, the rabbit replied, its voice laced with a hint of smugness. But you do seem to be having trouble accepting that you're talking to a rabbit. Rabbits don't talk, Ricky exclaimed, his voice rising. Ah, the rabbit said, nodding. Maybe I'm the one who's losing it. Ricky hated this rabbit. For a second, he considered putting a bullet in its head. How can you speak? He asked, his voice low and menacing. A flicker of amusement crossed the rabbit's face. To speak, my dear boy, is to engage in a complex interplay of neurobiological processes, linguistic structures, and cognitive faculties. It is to bridge the abyss between the internal world of thought and the external world of sound. Yet, beyond the mechanics, it is a testament to our capacity for abstract reasoning, symbol manipulation, and social interaction. In essence, language is a manifestation of our unique place in the fabric of existence. Ricky blinked, his mind reeling. I know what speaking is, he said, but how can you, a rabbit, do it? Well, how can you do it? Asked the rabbit. My mom taught me, Ricky replied, his voice small. The rabbit made a gesture as if to say, same. I am Harold, the rabbit offered. And who might you be? I'm Ricky. He leaned forward to shake hands and then stopped. That wouldn't be a good idea, he muttered, realizing the absurdity of the gesture. Oh, indeed, Harold agreed. A man shaking paws with a rabbit would certainly draw attention. You seem perplexed. I just got a decision to make, Ricky replied, his voice heavy with doubt. I'm supposed to do this job, but I'm having second thoughts, wondering if it's the right thing to do. Yeah, taking a life isn't a decision to take lightly, Harold said, his voice surprisingly deep and wise. How? Ricky started, trailing off, his mind racing. Come now, I'm a rabbit. I know a hunter when I see one, Harold said, surprisingly calm. What makes this one different? Well, Ricky started, she's innocent. I can't see why she should die. He looked at Harold, who nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. Usually my targets are real assholes, Ricky continued, a bitter smile creeping across his face. Murderers, rapists, the usual. But this one hasn't done anything like that, Harold said, his voice filled with sympathy. Ricky looked back up at Gloria, laughing with her friends, the two of them digging into an enormous piece of chocolate cake. Consider this, responded Harold, his voice carrying a weight that belied his small stature. A man who takes another's life, well, to many, his actions are abhorrent, and his existence seems utterly worthless, and is therefore not worthy of mercy. Yet, even he is a product of countless factors, a culmination of genetics, environment, and experience. His choices, though reprehensible to others, are a result of complex interactions within his mind and soul. To say that his life is less valuable than another's is to deny the inherent complexity and interconnectedness of all existence. Your profession forces you to confront the ultimate paradox of existence, the value of life. You are tasked with extinguishing life, a complex network of experiences, thoughts, and emotions. Yet, in doing so, you are also extinguishing a life that, from the individual perspective, is the entire universe. If all lives are equal, then the act of taking one is no less morally reprehensible than taking another. To believe otherwise is to succumb to the illusion of moral superiority, to believe that your own life, or the life of your target, is somehow more worthy than the lives of others. It is to deny the interconnectedness of all existence. Ricky sat there stunned. He had never thought about it like that before. Harold's words echoed in his mind, a haunting melody of philosophical contemplation. Ricky wasn't expecting such a complex answer from a rabbit, though it was exactly the question he'd been wrestling with. He leaned into it, desperate for guidance. After all, he didn't have anyone else to talk to about this. So, he began, You're saying that if I decide not to kill my target because she's a good person, then I shouldn't be killing anyone at all because I don't have the right to decide who lives and who dies. Precisely, Harold said, his voice carrying a weight of authority. If you believe some lives are more valuable than others because they're not awful people, then taking any life is wrong. To choose who lives and who dies is to claim a power that you don't have. It's playing God, a role that no mortal should aspire to. But what about the lives I've already taken? Questioned Ricky. The past, my dear boy, is a place of regret and learning. It cannot be changed. However, it can serve as a catalyst for growth and transformation. The choices you have made in the past do not define who you are, but rather who you have the potential to become. If you understand that you are not God, and therefore do not get to choose who lives and who dies, then you need to go ahead with the kill today. However, if you are starting to believe that some lives are more worthy than others, then perhaps it is time to consider a different path, one that aligns with your newfound understanding. Ricky pondered this. For the first time in his career, he questioned the morality of his profession. If he decided to go ahead and kill Gloria, would he be haunted by the regret? Such hesitation was unbecoming of a contract killer. If he decided that she didn't deserve to die, it implied a belief in his own divine authority, the power to determine who lives and who dies. He knew he was no deity. To choose not to kill Gloria would be to usurp a power he did not possess. How do I know if I will have regret over this? He asked the rabbit. Ricky, regret is a complex emotion, a product of our mind's attempts to reconcile our actions with our values. Whether or not you will experience regret is impossible to predict. However, it is worth considering the potential consequences of your actions, both for yourself and for those around you. If you believe that taking Gloria's life is morally wrong, then the likelihood of regret increases. I don't really know if I have a moral code, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Ever since my first kill when I was 14, it seemed to come so easily to me. I never felt anything. It never bothered me. He paused, his eyes distant. Everyone I have killed has been what society would deem as a bad person. Gloria is the first target that actually hasn't done anything terrible to anyone else. Her only fault is that she married a man who is unfaithful and who has decided he wants her out the way. Harold thought for a moment, then responded. The absence of immediate emotional response does not equate to a lack of moral code. Our moral compass is often deeply ingrained, shaped by our experiences, beliefs, and values. Even if you have not felt remorse for your past actions, it is possible that your subconscious mind is grappling with the moral implications. Consider this. The fact that you are questioning your actions, that you are seeking guidance, suggests a moral code does exist within you. Perhaps it is buried beneath layers of experience and conditioning, but it is there nonetheless. Ricky had never given thought to the moral implications of his actions. He'd always lived by his own code, a code that boiled down to doing his job and moving on without looking back. Now, a woman he'd never met was threatening to upend his existence, and she was entirely unaware of it. So, began Ricky, if I choose not to kill Gloria, then that means that I think of myself as a god, because I am choosing who lives and who dies. But if I do kill her, then I'm admitting to being just a mere mortal, and I'm doing my job, but I will most likely experience regret and have to live with the consequences and the guilt that I will possibly be left with. Harold turned his little body to face Ricky. Correct. Your dilemma is a complex one. To choose not to kill Gloria is to assert a moral authority, to claim a power that in reality does not exist. However, to choose to kill her will put you personally in danger of living with remorse, which you have yet to experience, and you may not fully know how to live with that, since you've never experienced it before. You're making it sound like I actually have a moral compass, stated Ricky. I'm not like other people. I don't feel anything, or rather, I never have. I've never felt guilt or regret over anyone that I've killed. This is the first time that I'm feeling hesitation. He watched Gloria, her laughter infectious. There was something about her that sparked a different pattern of thoughts in him, something he neither understood nor liked. Your hesitation to kill Gloria, said the rabbit, is intriguing. Could it be that your feelings for her have clouded your judgment? Perhaps you have developed a fondness for her, a connection that goes beyond your professional obligations. Ricky looked down at the rabbit, surprised by the accusation. Feelings? I don't have feelings for her. He didn't sound sure as he shuffled in his seat. Are you certain, Ricky? Sometimes our emotions can be subtle, disguised by the demands of our daily lives. Perhaps you have developed a fondness for her that you were unaware of. It is not uncommon for individuals to form attachments to those they spend time with, even if they are unaware of it. Have you only watched her, or have you spoken to her? Asked Harold. Ricky hadn't spoken to her. He never approaches his targets. It's always best that they never see him. The risks were always too high. Perhaps, said the rabbit, you should consider speaking to her. Ricky pondered the rabbit's suggestion, to speak to Gloria. Despite his talent at ending lives without feeling, he'd actually never approached a woman just to talk. The thought made him nervous. Sure, he'd had sex, he wasn't completely dead inside, but it was always paid for, a transactional exchange with no emotional investment. He'd never considered talking to a woman with the sole purpose of getting to know her. Ricky, your hesitation to speak to Gloria is a sign that perhaps your feelings for her run deeper than you realize. It is natural to want to connect with others, to share experiences and emotions. Perhaps your reluctance to approach her is a manifestation of your fear of intimacy, of vulnerability. Ricky held up a hand, silencing the rabbit. All right, he protested. I don't need to talk about intimacy, and I ain't vulnerable. With a roll of his eyes, the rabbit replied, Of course not, Ricky. You're a paragon of masculinity, impervious to the complexities of human emotion. How could a creature so stoic and unfeeling be capable of vulnerability? Ricky looked at the little creature, the annoyance clear on his face. Ah, said Harold, looking over his shoulder. Here comes your bus. Ricky had lost track of time. He looked down the road and could see the bus approaching. He had to make a decision, and fast. So, my dear boy, the rabbit said as it turned its body back towards the bushes, what will it be? Will you accept your mortality and kill the lovely Gloria? Or will you instead claim your place as a god and cross the street and go and introduce yourself, possibly opening up a new experience for yourself? Ricky's eyes shot back and forth between the approaching bus and Gloria across the street, who was entirely unaware of what was happening behind her. He opened the briefcase just enough to slip one hand in and to grab the weapon. If he was going to kill her, he'd have to make it quick. Shoot her just as the bus was arriving so that he could hop on and then disappear without being seen. Thanks to the suppressor and the sound of the bus, nobody would know at first that she had been shot or where it had come from. Ricky watched Gloria, her laughter infectious, as the sound of the bus approaching grew louder. It was a deep, rumbling roar like a thunderous beast charging towards them. The bus's engine groaned and strained. Its brakes squealed in protest as it began to slow down. The vibration of the approaching vehicle shook the ground beneath Ricky's feet, adding to the sense of his impending decision. Then, as the bus came to a halt a few feet away, Ricky knew what to do. He took in a deep breath, preparing himself for what may come from his decision. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the podcast, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your support means the world to me and will help me to keep this podcast going. So until next time, cheers.